It's Muppeturgy, and we're here to tally up the ways we love the Harry Belafonte episode of The Muppet Show.
Yay! We love it. Woo!
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. I'm David Levy, and here today with me are...
Michal Richardson.
Adam Grossworth.
And Christy Bauer.
That feels like a different order that we don't do very often.
We change it up.
It's good.
Yeah.
Here is a Muppet News Flash.
We are here this week to talk about Season 3, Episode 12 of The Muppet Show. It was produced the week of November 18th, 1978, and aired in New York, February 19th, 1979. As we discussed last time, there was a big break in air dates after our last produced episode. It was number 19 in the air order, airing in between Leslie Uggams and Sylvester Stallone, which we have not talked about yet. In the news, C-SPAN launches today, bringing limited coverage of the House of Representatives to TV. What could be more exciting? Also exciting, especially from the future, Disney and Universal are suing Sony to prevent them from selling the Betamax home video recorder in the United States.
Oh, no.
The filmmakers are arguing that the machines should be declared illegal because they allow consumers to duplicate their copyrighted motion pictures and television shows and thus reduce the economic value of this material. The outcome is expected to set a precedent. Oh, noes! VCRs cost $600 to $1,000 in 1979.
Jeez,
Right? I didn't even bother looking that up on the inflation calculator.
Oh,
Just wow.
that hurts.
Yeah.
Man, just imagine like traveling back in time with that TiVo and blowing their minds.
Or an iPhone. I mean, and that's like a cliche, but really?
No wonder we didn't get our first VCR until several years later.
Yeah, we didn't get one until I was 12, so like 87, 88. On the Cashbox Pop charts, the number one song is Rod Stewart's, I really want to say this correctly, Da Ya Think I'm Sexy. I learned this week that is how that title is spelled.
D-A?
D-A-Y-A, Think I'm Sexy.
Yeah. Da.
Also, I hate that song so much. Like with every fiber of my being, I hate that song.
I just don't understand Rod Stewart as a phenomenon.
I don't either, but of all of the songs, like that is the one at the top of my hate list. Two songs I quite like further down the list. Number 14, Don't Cry Out Loud, and number 16, The Gambler, which will appear on future Muppet Show episodes. And I scrolled down the list very quickly, and at number 93 is the theme from Superman.
That makes sense.
I mean, it's a great song. It's a great piece of music. It's a great film score. But
I mean, former guest Glenn Weldon recently went on Pop Culture Happy Hour to argue that it is the best piece of music from a film ever, best song from a film.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite scores. It's a John Williams classic. But on the pop charts?
Sure.
I mean, if they're playing it on the radio.
They were playing it on the radio. Somebody's were weird. And I checked Billboard, and it did hit the top 100 on Billboard as well. Rod Stewart also has the number one album. Our friends Billy Joel, Barbra Streisand, and Olivia Newton-John are still in the top 10.
All right.
Grease is no longer the word on the singles chart, but the album is at number 26. On television, on CBS, before The Muppet Show, on the Channel 2 News, I'm going to read from the ad. Some of the world's most beautiful and glamorous women live in New York, but the women you'll meet tonight don't quite fit this description. They're known as bag ladies, and chances are you've seen them around. I don't want to get deep into this, but bag ladies was a sure, like, of its time term.
I think I've read it in books more than I've heard it spoken out loud.
Oh,
it was a term that was used a lot in the 80s.
Yeah, like it was what we called homeless women, but not men. In the 80s and 90s, or the 80s and 70s, I guess. And like there's a character in Rent whose official name is Lady with Bags, right? Not Bag Lady, but Lady with Bags. I don't know. It just in the 80s, it was like, oh, bag ladies, bag ladies, bag ladies. But like, there's no male equivalent. And then it just,
the male equivalent is hobo.
I guess so. But homeless man. It was like bag ladies and homeless men. I don't want to get too deep into this. I have nothing to say that's insightful about it, but it really, like, it just stuck out to me as like,
newsflash, The media treats women worse.
Well, and also newsflash, the media it treats homelessness and, people who are suffering terribly as well.
Right.
But I don't know. It stuck out. This whole ad is terrible. Obviously, we'll have a screenshot of it in the show notes. Following The Muppet Show on Channel 2 in New York, Wonder Woman. This is season 3, episode 17, so this is not new, but I don't think this has been in our Monday night lineup before. That is followed by our regular Monday night friends, MASH, WKRP in Cincinnati, and Lou Grant.
Wonder Woman only lasted 3 seasons, so maybe this was the beginning of the end where they're just like shuffling it around from week to week.
Oh, maybe. Also, every season was like wildly different from the season before. So that's fun. On ABC, we have Roots, The Next Generation Part 2. Something called Salvage 1, a one-season wonder that ran for 19 episodes. Harry runs a salvage operation in which he and his partners reclaim trash and junk and sell it as scrap or as other things. I don't know what that means. Harry also has a homemade spaceship, which he sometimes uses to reclaim junk satellites.
Okay.
Harry was played by Andy Griffith.
Okay. Great.
And on NBC, I know Michal's waiting for it.
I cannot wait.
Little House on the Prairie, episode Barn Burner.
Yes.
Judd Larrabee, the town bigot, is accused of setting Jonathan Garvey's barn on fire.
What's
Okay.
Jonathan Garvey's crime? Is he like Irish or something?
No, John Garvey defended the town black man. Don't you think there'd be more than one town bigot at this time?
I'm just impressed they have a black man in the prairie.
So I actually, of course I watched it, and I looked this up. The black man was played by Moses Gunn, who did many things, but the notable role to me was Booker T. Washington in the movie of Ragtime. I was very delighted to see that this was not his only or even first episode, because I was sure that they had invented this character for the sole purpose of abusing him in this episode. But he apparently was around a decent amount, as was Judd Larrabee, the town bigot. So good for them, ?
I do, but I don't want to see a band named the Judd Larrabee, the town bigot.
Judd Larrabee and the town bigots, I think, would be the
No,
band.
Judd Larrabee and the Barn Burners.
Also good.
Yeah. I'm going to put that on my list.
Yeah. At least in the world of this episode, barn burning was punishable by death, but assaulting a child was not.
The child had it coming.
I mean, depends on the child, right? I don't know.
If the child is in the barn, how does that figure?
The child was in the barn.
Oh, well then.
But I mean, then he left. It doesn't matter. Anyway. Following Little House on the Prairie is Backstairs at the White House Part 4. This is a miniseries. Obviously, they're chasing, the success of Roots, based on the autobiography of a woman who worked as a seamstress at the White House from 1931 to 1961 over 4 administrations. Leslie Uggams, who we're going to talk about real soon, played the book's author. It also starred Louis Gossett Jr., Celeste Holm, Harry Morgan, Estelle Parsons, Leslie Nielsen, Cloris Leachman, and others. I am really delighted because I actually watched this a few months ago, and I'm so relieved it wasn't for nothing.
Why did you watch it a few months ago?
So we have talked about my friend's Extra Hot Great podcast many, many times, and it came up over there for some reason, and it sounded interesting, and it has all these great people in it. And so I got the DVDs from the library, and I'm so sorry, Dan Casino, who I know is listening. It was not interesting. So I shouldn't say I watched this because I did not make it to part 4. I actually don't know how long I made it because I sort of had it on in the background and it just kept playing. And at some point I was like, why is this still on? I have to turn it off. It is very, very boring, despite having all of these wonderful, wonderful actors in it.
That's a shame.
But check your local library. Libraries are great. Maybe they have it on DVD if you're interested. It is definitely not streaming anywhere.
And our special guest step is the amazing Harry Belafonte. That's Harry Belafonte, folks.
Well, that's a meaningful clip out of context.
It's funny.
Harry Belafonte, singer, actor, activist. Born in 1927 in Harlem to Caribbean immigrants, Harry's strong affinity for his roots was fostered by spending 5 years of his adolescence in Jamaica with his mother. He left high school to join the Navy during World War II, and after his service ended, he returned to New York to study drama. He began singing in nightclub engagements to pay for his acting classes, and that led to a recording contract, first as a pop singer, but he soon found his niche in the folk movement. He incorporated Caribbean folk songs into his repertoire and set off a national craze for calypso music in the 1950s. He hadn't stopped acting, though, making his Broadway debut in 1953 in John Murray Anderson's Almanac, for which he won a Tony Award. He also made his film debut in 1953 and began making television appearances as well. He'd have his first of 3 Emmy Awards before the decade ended. 1953 was also the year of his first hit single, the song Matilda, which became one of his signature songs. His real breakthrough in music came in 1956 with the release of his album Calypso, which he claimed was the first album to sell more than 1 million copies in 1 year. The album spent 31 weeks at number 1, 58 weeks in the top 10, and 99 weeks on the US charts. It's also the album that gave us the Banana Boat song, which hit number 5 on the pop charts. More on that in a bit. The 50s also found him getting more involved in civil rights activism, which landed him on the blacklist. He was a close friend of Martin Luther King Jr.'s, and he supported King's activities as well as those of other civil rights activist groups, both financially and through hands-on organizing work. He also got involved in Democratic politics, campaigning for both JFK and LBJ. He kicked off the 60s winning a Grammy Award for Best Folk Performance, and he began producing for television, making him the first African American to do so. And you might remember from our Petula Clark episode that he broke boundaries on screen as well, when the two of them stood up to demands to censor a duet that they taped for one of Petula's specials. He continued to record, perform, and act throughout the ensuing decades. Most recently, he was in Black Klansman in 2018. His humanitarian efforts also never let up, including involvement with African causes, including being a part of USA for Africa and in We Are the World in the 1980s, prostate cancer awareness, and many, many decades of service with UNICEF. Nor did his political activism cool down. He's been an outspoken critic of the U.S. policy towards Cuba and of just about everything George W. Bush did, as well as being a vocal supporter of Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders. In 2017, he was an honorary co-chair of the Women's March on Washington. He's won more awards than I have time to list, most recently being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, 2022, and at 95 years old, he is the oldest living person to have received that honor. So that's Harry Belafonte. What are your all thoughts, feelings, memories, preconceived notions about him going into this episode?
I am aware of the songs that he sings in this episode and the other song that you mentioned in this list, Matilda, mostly because of parodies of those songs.
I was like, we're going to get to Alan Sherman, aren't we?
I mean, it doesn't take me that long to get to Alan Sherman. But yes, we can link to my Zelda.
I know this episode very well. This is one that I have very fond childhood memories of. I think the Banana Boat song, like the chorus of the Banana Boat song, was sort of like became sort of like a weird. I don't know if it like was a children's song or if it was just something that like my parents would sing, and of course Beetlejuice, and I was aware of all his humanitarian work. But like as a personality, it's kind of just as an on-screen personality, it's kind of just this, which is not too shabby. It's pretty great. But like his music is endured. Like I think just by its placement in things, right? It pops up surprisingly frequently, and I think this is a pretty classic episode. And like Beetlejuice has certainly stuck around. So like even if you don't know who he is, I think a lot of his songs, despite being of a very specific time, have endured in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have expected if you'd asked me 40 years ago, I would have been 7. But you know what I mean.
Or if it hadn't been for Beetlejuice.
Well, I mean, kind of, yeah. But I mean, that counts for something.
So yeah, I was definitely one of those kids who was introduced to him by Beetlejuice. And I knew a little bit of his music going into this episode, but I decided to do a deep dive. And first of all, guys, I think I'm in love with Harry Belafonte.
Totally reasonable.
I hear you. Yeah.
I mean, for one thing, especially in the era of his Muppet Show episode, he was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, what an instrument! Like, if you listen to go beyond like his like up tempo calypso bangers, which is hard because like you put on something like Angelina, and like I'm like cool, let's play it 5 more times because I haven't stopped dancing. But if you put on like some of his like jazzier pop stuff. Oh my God, what a voice. What a voice. But I'm really excited to talk about him, particularly in the context of a prior conversation that we had on this podcast. So, in my deep dive, I listened to, for the first time, his version of the song Cotton Fields, which we discussed in the Teresa Brewer episode. And, we had this sort of conversation of like, is this racist? Why does this feel weird? It's a lead belly song. So, it definitely was not written for a white lady to sing necessarily. But I learned something about the broader context of the song that I found shocking. And I brought a clip.
Yes, I was over in Arkansas when the sheriff asked me, what did you come here for? Healing the cotton fields at home. Oh, when them cotton balls get rotten, you can't pick very much cotton in the cotton fields at home.
Yeah. So what the song is setting up is a verse that is not in the at least in the Muppet Show version of the Teresa Brewer
What?
version.
No.
So, there's the line about, grew up in Louisiana, just a mile from Texarkana, which is a, town in Arkansas. And then there's this verse about being stopped by the police in Arkansas, a mile from your home.
Oh,
Yeah, the song's political. The song is like explicitly political.
Huh.
It gave me a lot to chew on because I was like, oh, suddenly the song has context. The like, when the cotton balls are rotten, you can't pick that much cotton, like guy looking for work, like the slavery connotation. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's interesting that as part of his civil rights activism, he also refused to tour in the South for a number of years because of the situations that the song describes.
I feel like we've tipped our hands, but Christy, what'd you think of this episode?
This is an indisputably great episode and I loved it. However, in the broader scheme of the show, I got some quibbles.
Really?
Not with Harry Belafonte, who is perfect and wonderful, and I love him so much. But with some of the Muppet interstitial stuff, I think they dropped the ball a few times, and they kind of tread some well-worn ground in some of the sketches. But, I mean, overall, yeah, amazing. Amazing.
David?
Yeah, great episode. I always say that the way that I can tell a perfect episode is that when it ends, I feel like it's shorter than the other episodes because it's just gone by so quickly because I'm so absorbed in it. And that is definitely the case with this one. I wouldn't exactly call it a no skips episode because a little bit of Louis Kazagger goes a long way, but definitely one of the all-time best, if not the all-time best.
Michal?
yep, right up there. I mean, it's not just a great episode, but it's an episode that, we'll talk about this when we talk about the finale, but there's a spirit to it that taps into what people remember nostalgically about the Muppets, this innocence and their philosophy. That's, I think, what people remember about this episode especially. There were a couple of spots where I got bored, but mostly this is one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, agreed. It's in my top 3 so far. It's probably going to stay in my top 5 when we're done with all this. It's a bad Pigs in Space. But yeah, that's my only... That's what keeps it from being perfect for me.
Yep.
Harry Belafonte, 30 seconds to curtain, Mr. Belafonte.
Thank you, Scooter.
Say, is everything all right?
Oh, yeah, everything's okay. Except, I haven't even done the show yet, and already somebody started to put me down.
No. Oh, what do you mean?
Just now I heard somebody outside my door say, "Don't go inside that dressing room. Crazy Harry's in there."
Oh, well, they didn't mean you. You see, Crazy Harry's Crazy Harry?
Did somebody say, don't go inside that dressing room? Yes. So that was our cold open. Statler and Waldorf are not as enthusiastic about this episode as we are.
I've seen enough. Let's leave.
Alas.
Is that a repeat?
It feels like it.
I don't know. I've seen this episode so many times that I can't tell.
Right.
So I don't know.
All right.
Anyway, Gonzo blows a little insect out of his trumpet, which the wiki says is a fly, but it's a little yellow dot, so I was assuming it was a bee. But it does this cute thing where it spins him around and then he just falls over.
But there's a bee later in the episode that looks nothing like this bee.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a little yellow fly. That's disgusting. When flies come in colors, that makes them extra disturbing, is all I'm saying.
The Muppet Show backstage.
So backstage at the Muppet Show, something's different this week.
Fozzie, this is not going to work.
Just read off the page, Frog.
Leggies and Jungle Funds. Leggies and Jungle Funds?
That's it.
Yes, Leggies and Jungle Funds.
All right, so my typing is bad.
Leggies and Jungle Funds. Welcome again, Tidy Muppel Shocks. My name is Kermit the Forg. The Forg?
Come on, pick up the pace. Here we go.
I always forget that this is the same episode as this is the Harry Belafonte episode. And so anytime I watch this, I'm just delighted every time that this scene happens. Because I remember this and I reference it.
Yeah.
Like I say Leggies and Jungle Fins, and I don't remember where it comes from. It's just a thing that's like in my repertoire.
Yep, I reference Leggies and Jangle Fins, and I also say Kermit the Forg, both because of this and because of the Sesame Street sketch where Kermit is looking for his Kermit the Frog t-shirt, and they keep giving him Kermit the Gorf, Kermit the Groff, and Kermit the Forg. But just the way he says the Forg has really stuck with me. It's delightful. Fozzie this week has decided that the Muppet Show is still missing something.
Fozzie, what are you doing with this typewriter on my table?
Kermit, I am writing the script for this week's show.
But what makes you think the show needs a script?
Oh, Kermit, come on. Every show has a script. Yeah, that way you leave nothing to chance. Hey, guys, hey. Here is the musical moment for this week.
Curtains open. New Zealand and Rolf do something funny. Curtains close.
It's so beautiful. I love this so much. This is something that I reference in my everyday life of like when I'm just trying to indicate a yada, yada, yada. I'm like, yeah, the curtains open. Rolf and New Zealand do something funny. Curtains close. Fozzie's timing is just so perfect. The way he like slides over the trying to say typing machine. I'm not doing it. The way he slides over the typewriter. Like, I love this so much.
So just to be me, dramaturgically speaking, it makes no sense that this scene comes after the clip that we heard before it.
Yeah.
When Kermit is already reading from the script that Fozzie has written.
That's my quibble.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
this whole thing is like weirdly out of order.
I mean, if we're gonna be like assholes about it,
Yes.
when Fozzie comes out at the beginning and he's like, Kermit, your timing must be off. You should be getting lots of laughs with a script that is literally just "Welcome to the Muppet Show." Here's Harry Belafonte. Like, what the fuck?
Well, yes,
Right.
Fozzie's a little bit stupid. Like that doesn't actually bother me.
I mean, it makes as much sense as any of the other things that have happened in similar situations where it's like, oh, the guest star is supposed to be on stage. Why aren't they here yet? Or, yeah, the fact that Fozzie is just typing this out as people are going on and that Kermit is saying, what makes you think the show needs a script?
Like that's all. Yeah, none of that bothers me. I mean, also, like, if you look at a keyboard, there's no way that you could type Leggies and Jangle Fins when you're trying to type
Without
ladies.
intent.
Like, that's all fine. That's just funny. But it just doesn't, like, why would Kermit ask? Like, I can suspend my disbelief to a point. But then Kermit asking Fozzie what he's doing when he has already read from the script that he is writing is the part that is the bridge too far.
Yeah. Agree.
No, that didn't bother me.
It didn't bother me, but also I've seen this episode many, many times. So it just stopped registering with me.
Yeah. Anyway, still great.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Still great.
You know, I've mentioned on previous episodes that there are certain episodes of The Muppet Show that feel like they are designed just to showcase one specific performer. And this is very much a Frank Oz episode.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He so runs with it that, like, I'm willing to give him all the berth he needs to do whatever he wants to do, because it's just, like, I mean, yes, good at his job, always delightful. But this Fozzie in particular, but all of his characters. And this is why I will fight you on Pigs in Space. I just think he is at like a next level in this episode, even compared to his already very high functioning level that he's usually.
Yeah, no, that's true. I agree with that completely.
So moving right along, Fozzie, as he is attempting to script this episode while it is in progress, he gets himself into a bit of a bind. His tie gets caught in the typewriter.
Hey, Fuzzy.
Oh, hi. Hi, Ralph.
How's it going?
Oh, well, gosh,
You're stuck, huh?
yeah.
Well, listen, it happens to all writers.
This does?
Sure, it's what's called writer's block.
Oh, yes.
You know where you can't come up with the next line.
Yes, well, I can't come up with the next line. Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe I can help. Let me see what you last wrote here.
That is the sound of Fozzie getting pulled by his tie into the typewriter. I love this episode so much. And also, I just wanted to include this bit because Rolf and Fozzie continue to be this unexpectedly terrific combination. I don't know why I'm saying unexpected. It's Jim and Frank, just not with the Muppets you usually see.
They didn't pair them as much as they could have.
Yeah, but every time they do, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And we'll see Fozzie's writing career appear one more time in the episode when he asks Harry Belafonte for guidance at the end, but we'll talk about that when we get to the finale.
What I think is weird about sort of the overarching dynamic here is Kermit is the boss. So how does he even get into the situation where Fozzie thinks he's writing the episode to begin with? Like, Fozzie is so forceful and bosses him around so much, and Kermit just sort of takes it, sort of yells at him, but like, I just don't understand. Like, it's like that. There's a reading comprehension thing you do with kids when they're learning, where you're like, what happened in the scene before what you just read? Like, what happened in the scene before this episode starts that sets this up? I have a hard time picturing that.
Yeah, I get that. But it's sort of like the episode where Fozzie was in therapy, which made much less sense.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Met Fozzie? Of course he's in therapy.
No, not that, but that made sense. I mean, the
application of what
the reaction to him, and oh, you don't want to do your act? Okay, right? Like that was harder for me to believe. But there is, I think we're starting to see a dynamic emerge with Fozzie, which I think will carry through to the Muppet movie. Will carry through to sort of modern Kermit and Fozzie, of like, we're going to humor the bear because he's kind of stupid, but he means well. He's real nice. He's our friend. And I think that's kind of what's happening here. And I think it's very sweet.
Yeah, I think even though this is the same Muppet show that had Kermit threatening to fire Fozzie, bossing him around and yelling at him, I think their relationship is evolving. And they're friends now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we will see Fozzie yell back at Kermit the way he does in this episode for very much longer.
Right. I think that shift is still happening. But I think Kermit is finding it easier to humor Fozzie than to argue with him because it's harmless.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yay, more opportunities to profess my love for Harry Belafonte.
Yay.
So dreamy.
And he was 50 years old when they shot this.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
And smoking.
Let's talk about some songs. So the very first song needs no introduction, and yet it definitely gets one.
That was terrific. I bet you must have sang that song a bunch of times on TV, huh?
No. As a matter of fact, this is the very first time.
This here on the Muppet Show is the very first time you sang this?
The very first time. That's why it's very special to me.
You bet it is, and to us too. Okay, I tell you what, we're gonna do it up really perfect. Hey, pigs, come on in. This is your pig chorus. Okay, and I'll take care of everything else. Don't worry, this is gonna be great.
Are you sure?
Trust me.
What song are they talking about, you might ask? Let's just hear it.
Our clips are a little unusual for us this week. This is from the end of the song. And it's a longer clip than we usually play because, frankly, I was delighted and I didn't want to cut it. But if you haven't watched the episode, just know that many, many shenanigans have occurred before we reach this point.
Day-o, 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 day-o. Daylight come and we want to go home. Daylight come and we want to go home. Again, please. Can we do it all together?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Here we go. All right. We said that, yeah.
Seven of my things.
Daylight come and we want
It's Deo!
Yay!
The Banana Boat song, depending on who you ask or what side of the parentheses you fall on. It is a traditional Jamaican folk song, and interestingly, even though it gets credited as a calypso song and was on Harry Belafonte's album Calypso, it is actually more an example of a genre called mento, the fresh maker. I tried to do a little bit of research on the difference between calypso and mento, and there aren't like a ton, so it's not one of those things where it's like, oh my god, how dare you call this calypso? Like most people are like, no, Deo, it's a calypso song. But it has to do with instrumentation. Mento is more Jamaican, calypso is more from Trinidad. And yeah, there are sort of weirder, more acoustic instruments used with mento. Calypso had a moment in the 40s and 50s, and Harry Belafonte was obviously at the forefront of this. And David mentioned this a little bit at the top, but Calypso was Harry's second number one album, and it was number one for 31 weeks. Think about that for a second. 31 weeks. It's
Of
bonkers.
Calypso.
And yeah, it was in fact the first album to sell over 1 million copies. Singles had sold over 1 million copies at that point, but yeah, long albums. This was the first one. It's quite an achievement. And another fun fact, Harry's first number one album, the album before this, which was just called Belafonte, was the first ever number one album on Billboard's Top 200 Albums chart. But yeah, the song, as previously mentioned, peaked at number 5 on the Hot 100. This is delightful. This is the perfect melding of earnest guest star and Muppet shenanigans, and a brilliant showcase of Frank Oz.
It's so beautiful.
It's so good.
I love it so much.
I love so the bit that we played from the intro about it being the first time he's done the song on TV is true, and it was really important to him, and he let them do this to it, which I love. In the book of Muppets and Men, he's interviewed along with many of the guest stars, but there's a pretty long chunk of his, and it's also excerpted on Muppet Wiki. And he talks about this. He says, I seldom do television appearances, but I have always had the highest regard for Jim Henson's taste and artistry. So when I was invited to be a guest on the Muppet Show, I saw that this might be an opportunity to do something very worthwhile. In addition to Turn the World Around, which we'll talk about in a bit, Henson had pointed out to Belafonte that standard material was also required to help entice the audience. So basically, yes, we will do your very earnest stuff, but can we also do something fun? And so Belafonte agreed to sing the Banana Boat song. But like, I love that, like, he let them do so much shtick with, you know, something that obviously was also very important to him. And like, he's clearly having a genuine good time with Fozzie. It's great.
Yeah, this is one of the episodes that we taped off TV when I was a kid. So this episode is burned into my brain. But I don't think I ever properly appreciated how much fun Harry Belafonte is having and the performance that they get out of him. And the way that he it speaks so earnestly with Fozzie. When Fozzie says, "What's a tally man?" and Harry just sits down next to him and explains it. And the way he laughs at everything that the Muppets are doing, the timing that he has with Fozzie, and the way that he like says trust me at the end of the number right back to him.
So good.
It's so lovely. Something else that I noticed in this round of viewing is that Beauregard has these eyes, or this eyebrow ridge, I guess, where he can like squint and open his eyes again. That like, I guess I sort of knew because you're used to thinking of him squinting, but he plays it up when they're singing this song. And
That's
it's lovely.
what a few weeks ago when the sandbag hit him on the head. Like that's what I was talking about. You just articulated it much better than I did. When I was like, his smushy face is cool. Like that's what I meant.
That part of his squishy
face is really expressive in a great way.
It's great.
I think a couple times in this episode, you really notice that the Muppet Workshop has upped their game for season 3. When we talk about Turn the World Around, I want to talk about the mouths on the African characters.
Oh yeah, and the liveness of this episode. I mean, obviously, it makes sense very often for songs to be lip synced, and that's fine. Like I'm not troubled by that in any way. But this is clearly a live performance. Right, there's a lot of vamping. I mean, I assume that there's a percussionist off stage who is playing for real, and you can tell, right, that it helps the comedy. It helps, I assume it's heavily scripted, but it feels real. It feels natural. It feels in the moment,
and he laughs while he's singing, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, and it really captures the feeling of being part of a joyful call and response song, like. Yeah. For anyone who went to summer camp or was part of a youth group or I guess like goes to like the right kind of religious services, like this is an experience that you can have. And even like, and especially the way that Fozzie is like sort of fucking up and whether it's intentional or not, like adds to the communal joy of the experience. And even just sitting on my couch as an observer, that felt very infectious to me.
Like even the laugh track, not so much in this, but in the drum battle, like it's not so much a laugh track as an applause track, but like that felt more real. And I know that it's fake, right? But they're like everybody's on their game in a different way because it all feels so natural and so affecting.
Yeah, I was really appreciating the sound design in this episode also. There are a lot of tiny things that you don't pay attention to, like the sounds from the typewriter. But the timing on the sound design in this episode is also a lot of fun, along with the laugh track and the applause track.
Yeah, I want to come back to that when we get to the drum battle.
So, because this is a traditional folk song, that means it's in the public domain. Shout out to the public domain. But it also means that some people capitalized on that in a very sort of... Okay, the only way I can describe this is, that sequence in Dreamgirls where you see the white people doing their version of the song?
Oh. We're not going to talk about Spike Jones, are we? We're going to talk about something else.
No,
oh, it's something else. I've heard the clip already.
It's something else. Let's just play the clip.
Hey there, girls. Where you going? Down to the beach. That's where we're going. Hey there, girls. What you gonna do? Sun and sun and party too. Hey yo, hey yo. Out in the sun, out in the sun. Hey yo.
Wow.
Yep.
Like you sent me that before, but until you described it in Dreamgirls terms, I didn't really connect what was happening.
Yep. It is a surf party song called "Hey Yo."
Hey-o.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just a
Bless
fun
their hearts.
curiosity.
I need a palate cleanser.
Let's do it.
Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and me wanna go home. Come,
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Excuse me. What is a tallyman?
What is what?
A tallyman. You're saying tallyman. What's that?
Well, he's the boss. The tallyman is the guy who counts the bananas as they go into the hold of the ship. And without him, there's just no work. He's a very important man.
Could I be a tallyman?
Sure.
Oh, yeah? Oh, terrific. Okay, here I am, the tallyman or the tally bear.
Much better.
That banana boat's a wonderful number.
Yeah, and look what they did to it. I have a good mind to go home.
If you had a good mind, you wouldn't be here in the first place.
Speaking of the public domain.
So we get a repeat song, but not in the manner that we're used to getting it.
You know T for two?
T for two. I know it backwards.
Oh, good, because that's the way we want to hear it.
Good, because that's the way I'm going to sing it.
Oot.
Rough eat.
And eat, rough oot.
Ooya. Rough eam.
And eam, rough ooya. Ease,
Ootanak.
a weepa wow, eep, blue, ew.
It's T for two. Backwards.
And of course he knows it backwards. This is the at least third time they've featured the song.
It's coming back next week.
Oh my god.
Did someone have a bet that they're doing it 3 weeks in a row? Like, what is going on with that?
Yeah, there's got to be some secret reason to this. But the good news is I found something new and weird to talk about regarding this song, which I just learned about, which is there is an orchestral piece called Tahiti Trot, which is Dmitri Shostakovich's Opus 16 that is from 1927. And what it is a friend of his made a bet with him. They had just listened to the song. So Tahiti Trot was the Russian version of the song. As a reminder of this, the original song is from No No Nanette. It's a Vincent Youmans song. And the translation in Russian basically came out to Tahiti Trot. And so Shostakovich and his friend were sitting around and they listened to the song. And then and Shostakovich was like 21 at the time. And his friend was like, hey, I bet you 100 rubles that you couldn't sit down and orchestrate this song from memory in an hour. And Shostakovich was like, dude, you're on. And sat down and did it in 45 minutes, won the money, and then published it. And it gets played.
God bless.
Did you bring a clip?
I sure did.
Of course she did.
I love it.
It's really delightful, actually. I recommend listening to the whole thing. So, we get some more bee shenanigans in our UK spot. So this is Floyd and Zoot duet of Honeysuckle Rose, which is a Fats Waller song from 1928. Andy Razaf wrote the lyrics, not that that's relevant here. And it was part of an off-Broadway revue called Load of Coal that premiered at a venue in Harlem called Connie's Inn. It was a soft shoe number, which, you know, it's nice to see people doing soft shoe, something that's not T for two. Yeah, and we talked about the bee a little bit. It's definitely not like a blinking like laser pointer light, like whatever the thing was that came at Gonzo in the intro. It has more like Waldo the Spirit of 3D vibes, I think.
Yes.
It's a little bit scary.
So I stared very intently at this bee to try to figure out, was it a puppet? Was it animated? Was it superimposed? Was it in the room with them? And I, for the life of me, could not figure it out, even on a giant TV. Did anyone actually know what the effect is here?
I couldn't figure it out either.
No.
It's very impressive.
Was it?
Like, it looked like a little bee. Like, there were little wings that flapped, unlike the laser pointery thing from the beginning.
I thought it was just like an animated something.
Maybe.
But yeah, it was animated so differently than the bee or fly or whatever the insect was at the beginning. You'd think they would have animated it the same way.
Anyway, regardless of the bee, this happens to be like a great rendition of this song. Like they're not holding back. They could have just done whatever because it's there for a joke, but this is a legit performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little bit mad that it was interrupted. Such is the way in the Muppet Theater.
So is life.
I think that number raises a pertinent question.
What's that?
Why did they do it?
So next, my boyfriend Harry Belafonte and Animal get into a drum battle.
Your other boyfriend, Animal. So what can you tell us about the composer and the publishing of this song?
Absolutely nothing. Yeah, no, it's just delightful.
So we were talking about the liveness of everything, and I know this is probably not the case, but like I just really want to believe that this was actually like live and improvised. And I don't know, maybe
it feels like it.
We talked about this a little bit with the Rita Moreno episode. And Animals drumming. And, I know for something like Little Shop of Horrors, where you have a puppeteer and a voice who are not the same person, that generally the puppeteer is in charge and the voice actor is like watching them for cues. I mean, also it's very heavily rehearsed so that, you're generally in sync because you're consistent, but that the voice actor would sort of take their cues visually from the puppeteer, or from the puppet rather, because it's kind of, it's faster that way. It's easier. And there were moments when the sound of Animal's drumming was just like half a beat behind what Animal was doing. And I was like, maybe Frank Oz is just doing whatever he wants, and somebody is over there playing the drums and making it happen. Like I want that to be true. I'm also sure that they rehearsed the hell out of it. But they really look like they're having a great time.
Yeah, they're getting a little sweaty. Christy's boyfriend over there.
Yeah.
But yes, this is wonderful. And then they do this they both laugh at the end and then they collapse at the same time. It's very charming.
Yeah. And there's like great little close-ups too. Like, I mean, it's, I know Harry Belafonte acted quite a bit actually, but it's like, I sort of forget that side of his career, and he's really acting up a storm in this episode. He's got great reaction shots with Animal.
Yeah. And there's no dialogue in this number. It's just Harry Belafonte doing a lot of things with his face and saying like, yeah, what do you think of that? What are you going to do about it?
So we end with what is probably, and I concede that, there may be something in the next 2.5 seasons to contradict this, but what so far at least is the greatest finale of an episode.
So this is another longer clip than we usually play, but it's also kind of the whole explanation of the thing, because we can't really tell it better than Harry Belafonte can.
And that storyteller went way back into African tradition and African mythology. He began to tell the story about the fire, which means the sun, about the water, and about the earth. And then he pointed out that all of these things put together turn the world around. And that all of us, we're here for a very, very short time. And in that time that we're here, there really isn't any difference in any of us if we were to take time out to understand each other. And the question is, do I know who you are? Do you know who I am? Do we care about each other? Because if we do, together we can turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around.
I love this so much.
Yeah, I was like, keep going.
I don't know why it makes me cry, but it makes me cry every time.
I mean,
every time.
It's beautiful. It's
truly
really,
don't know.
really beautiful. So, what's interesting about this song is he introduces the song as being like, well, it's like a folk song that I came across in Guinea, but he does in fact get like the writing and publishing credit for it. Harry Belafonte and Robert Friedman are the credited writers for it, and I'm sure it's a matter of adaptation of an existing folk song into.
I think it's like it's a story. Like the storyteller was telling the story, and then he turned that into the song. I think is the gist.
But yeah, it was on an album called "Turn the World Around" from the year before, and after spending a lot of time recording mostly pop music, Harry had pivoted back into world music. So this is the title track of that, and yeah, it's really beautiful. The puppetry is really beautiful.
So good.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, there's something really interesting about these African mask characters that they've created where their mouths work differently than we're used to seeing Muppet mouths work. It's not the first time this season we've seen them, but I think it's the most elegant way, where usually Muppet mouths are large so that there's a lot of movement and like the whole head can move to sort of emphasize the talking. Here, they're the mouths are like within the head, like there's not the big flappy head dividing line that you get for most of them. So instead it's just like lips that move. I'm not doing it justice, but it's a different effect. It makes them look more interesting, more realistic, less like a hand puppet. It's very cool.
Yeah, well, and they're masks too, which so they look like sort of masks come to life in this uncanny way, which is the point. I was also taken by their hands. One of them in particular, they're all playing little percussion instruments, little shakers and things, right? And I think because of that, right, their hands don't move the way we're used to seeing Muppet hands moving either, which I think is just by virtue of the action that they're doing, but it's still really noticeable. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't watched this episode, I mean, first of all, how have we not convinced you yet to go and watch this episode? But yeah, these are 4 African masks. And we are often very quick to call things out as problematic on this podcast. So this is also from of Muppets and Men. That when the song was chosen for the show, the designers at the Muppet Workshop did background research on African masks to serve as the chorus. While these would be patterned very closely on real African masks, Henson was very particular about selecting the final designs, since, as Belafonte recalled, he didn't want to cause offense by choosing masks that would have some religious or national significance. So, I think if you were doing this now, this probably would not be the choice. Certainly if I were producing this now, I would probably say, like, let's incorporate some actual puppetry from Guinea or something like that. But this was certainly done thoughtfully. It was done with Harry Belafonte's input, and I love it.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
It's gorgeous.
It is.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't have quite the same emotional reaction to this that you all do, but I was watching it tonight at home, and 2 things happen. First, after Harry Belafonte does his introduction, Keith says to me, like, God, he talks to the Muppets like he's just on a talk show, like calmly explaining his philosophy to the hosts, and it's so engaging and so endearing, and you really believe that like world peace could happen if everyone could just listen to him, which is really true. And I'm like, yeah, and isn't it interesting that the album that this came from, which focused on world music and had this kind of theme to it, did not get released in the United States?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then the other thing is that I said, like, did not get emotional during it. And I was like, oh, and Harry Belafonte performed this at Jim Henson's funeral. And just saying that sentence, I started to tear up.
Yeah. And we'll put that YouTube video in the show notes.
It's...
And these...
Now, is there anyone else's funeral who you just watch on YouTube over and over and over again? Maybe Michael Bennett.
Back to the masks. The 3 of the 4 masks are on display at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta. So I have seen them up close, and I'll put some photos, very non-professional photos, in the show notes as well. And, I don't know if this is like a product of the museum, like restoration and preservation, but they really do look like they're carved out of wood too, which I think is part of what makes them look, they look Muppety, but they don't look like regular Muppets. They are really quite beautiful and quite detailed for something that I believe did get used a couple more times, but was really only intended to be used once.
One of the masks I noticed feels almost like a prototype for Clifford, the Muppet that Kevin Clash will perform in the 80s and really in the 90s, who becomes the host of Muppets Tonight and is sort of the like one Muppet who is sort of like canonically black, even though he's actually purple. What's interesting is that is the one that is not on display at the Center for Puppetry Arts. And I do wonder if like they use that structure to construct Clifford, because it really is like the shape of the face and the shape of the hair is the same. Obviously the colors and everything are different in the textures, but
maybe, but also puppets just disintegrate. I was assuming that 3 out of 4 like lasted, or at some point somebody thought to preserve them, and for one of them it was too late.
I guess it's just such a unique shape that it's not like there's a Whatnot Muppet that has that head shape that we see over and over again,
Yeah, it's possible. But yes, these masks are very cool and very striking. And still what gets me is at the end of the song, the whole chorus of Muppet Show Muppets just come in singing the song, and they all join together and they keep singing over the credits.
That was great. And that also caught me so by surprise, because like I said, I wasn't ready for the episode to end.
Yeah.
And it feels like maybe they weren't either. So like they just tried to get every last second of showtime they could by running the credits over this number.
And then they do this neat musical trick that Gonzo starts playing his trumpet, and it turns into the closing theme, and it blends with the song, which, I mean, they've never done this before, right? It's always...
They've changed the theme.
They've changed the theme.
But they haven't blended it into a song like
right. We always get a Statler and Waldorf tag or something in its place.
And hear Statler and Waldorf sing along. It melted their ice cold hearts.
Just like
and
mine.
Even Zook gets to play the right note at the end.
Yeah.
So is like a buddy war. So is life.
So is like a buddy war. So is life. So is life.
I love this so much.
I have to admit, I did not catch that he was playing a variation of the Muppet Show theme song until you pointed it out.
I got that. So I have, because this song is hard to find, like in my iTunes, I have, I think, a live recording of it. And I, years ago, like ripped this from the episode. So it lives in my iTunes. So I have heard this, like this entire track dozens of times and didn't realize that's what was happening until I read it on the wiki. I was like, oh yeah, it's very cool.
That is very cool. I didn't notice it either until you pointed it out. But it's so great. I've been reading the book How to Be Perfect by Mike Schur, which is kind of an exploration of the moral philosophy that they used in writing The Good Place. So I've been thinking a lot about morality and what we owe to each other, and if there's any possibility for humankind to turn out okay. I love that the introduction that Harry Belafonte gives to this song feels like it connects to that idea that the only way we're going to make it through this thing is if we help each other out, people. Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me that this song is also a Unitarian Universalist hymn now.
Never mind that jazz. Listen, Turkey.
What? And get out of show business?
All right. As though anything could possibly follow Turn the World Around, let's talk about a couple of the more skippable moments of this episode. So this week on Pigs in Space, Dr. Strangepork introduces his Dissolvatron, which dissolves items out of one location and reconstitutes them in another location. It also turns into a body-switching machine, and mayhem ensues.
And there you are.
Exactly as we were before. What?
Maybe not exactly.
But this is terrible. I can't live my life being you.
You think you got troubles?
Well, of course, I am kind of cute this way.
Hey, watch it! Watch it! Don't you dare touch you!
It is so much fun to see what I assume is Jim puppeteering Miss Piggy and Frank puppeteering Link. Either that's what's happening, or they do a very good impersonation of each other's styles.
Why isn't it a teleporter?
Because it's more fun to say Dissolvatron, maybe?
Okay, fine.
He also does a neat trick where Dr. Strangepork steals Miss Piggy's drink. She has this little cup of green juice with a straw in it. He dissolves it and brings it over to his side of the spaceship and drinks it. And every time Muppets drink with a straw, I want to know how they did it. I don't know how they did it. I can't tell you. I can tell you that there's a wiki page called Muppets with Anatomically Functioning Mouths.
Yeah, I don't like it.
Where the page is
I don't like that phrasing at all.
As the title makes it sound.
It's always on a table, so I assume it's from underneath.
Yeah, I'm assuming there's like they're suctioning it out, or there's a syringe, or. But I don't know.
You're right. It had not ever occurred to me that that maybe it's just going out through the bottom.
Yeah,
I was like coming up with all these like elaborate ways where like when the straw goes into the mouth, like what they could have in their hand that attaches to it that might suck it up. But like,
nope.
Oh yeah,
straw on the bottom with someone's thumb over the end of it, and then they take their thumb off, and the liquid comes out.
You're so smart.
I try. Sometimes I'm very stupid, but try for balance.
Shall we talk about Muppet Sports?
Oh, let's.
Okay, in the wild world of Muppet Sports this week, there is not much to see. Or at least not if you're one of the participants in this sporting event. It's the blindfold sprint. And everyone, including the medics, is blindfolded.
And we have a winner! And we need a stretcher!
It's really nothing to clip in that, but you know.
Yeah, they can't see. That's the joke. It makes me uncomfortable.
Why does it make you uncomfortable?
Because it feels like a very quick jump into making fun of blind people.
I guess that's true. That's they're not actually blind, but yeah, I see your point. It reminded me very much of the Monty Python sketch, The Upper Class Twit of the Year. The joke there is that they're so stupid that they don't know how to run the race, but the visual is basically the same. They're running around and crashing into each other because they don't know where to go or what to do. And it's like sort of an identical sketch without the blindfolds. But, you know, Upper Class Twit is a very British joke that I don't think you could quite pull off on The Muppet Show.
It did feel a lot like the SNL sketches with Governor Patterson, where at the end of the sketch he would just like wander into the camera.
Yes, which were ableist, but he was our governor, and it was really fun making fun of him. I'd forgotten all about this.
I mean, that's the answer to why this makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Anyway, we love this episode.
Because the end of this episode is just the song continuing on. We don't get an ending Statler and Waldorf clip, so we have no way to get out of Muppeturgy. So we're going to be talking to you forever.
How convenient.
I do have one final thought, which is a thing that I forgot to mention earlier in my, lovesick haze. Cool thing about Harry Belafonte, my last apartment in New York, I used to live a block from the Harry Belafonte Library, which was dedicated in his honor in 2017. And looking into it, I learned that when it was dedicated, he was the first person in 100 years to have a library in the New York Public Library System named after them. So
excellent.
It's awesome. And it's a very good library. It's on 115th Street. It's very cozy.
Do they have bananas?
No
Yes,
bananas.
they have no bananas.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Muppeturgy. Join us next week to get clued in on the Leslie Ann Warren episode of The Muppet Show. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Muppeturgy or on the web at Muppeturgy.com. Our theme music was composed and performed by Christy Bauer. Our show logo was created by Todd Bryan Backus, and this episode was edited by me, David Levy.